Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome to this week's show. We are the Fantasy Knuckleballers. I'm Justin. I'm here with Rich and Aaron. We're gonna do a little something different on this show. Us three are in an NL only league together, and we're gonna go through and do a little bit of analysis on that how that draft went down. And we're gonna start by looking at each team and saying what we thought each team's best pick was and what their worst pick was in the draft. And try to give some thought behind it. So let's go ahead and get started here. We'll just start with looks like first up is the Average Joes. So with this pick, with this team here, for my favorite pick from the Average Joes this year was Trevor Rogers in round 13. I'm all in on this guy, Trevor Rogers. I wanted him. I was targeting him, and I was really pissed when Kim took him because I had him. I was going to take him with that pick after in that same round. I mean, he's a young guy, a lot of upside. I think he's a really good pick at where he got him at. And then for my worst pick for that team was he took Amir Garrett in the 4th round. I know closers are at a premium, but me personally, that was way too early to take Garrett, who's not even guaranteed to get the closing spot. And just for the listeners out there, this is a 5x5 league, so holds is not one of the categories. So if Garrett doesn't get that closer spot, then his value is greatly diminished, and he wasn't even rostered for most of last year. So round 4 is a huge gamble there. As you all know, sometimes you got to take chances, and when those gambles pay off, that's how you win championships. But for me, that was just too big of a gamble. There were still other closers on the board: Kimbrel, Euphoria, Will Smith. I would have probably looked at one of them guys instead.
One thing to think about, Justin. I mean, we are a keeper league, so it was really like round 9.
Right.
I didn't have a problem really with Amir Garrett. I see your point though. There probably were other good players to pick, and maybe could have taken Amir Garrett later. When I look at Kim's team, Kim always has a really strong team. Kim focuses on power first, and this team has a lot of power. She has, or he has. I always say she. Sorry about that, Kim. Pete Alonso, Bryce Harper, Josh Bell, Juan Soto. It's stacked with power. I really feel like Kim's team probably has the most balanced pitching, from a starting standpoint. Corbin Burns, Kyle Hendricks, Denilson Lamet, Joe Musgrove, Sixto Sanchez, Trevor Rogers. That is a strong starting NL unit. And it's probably the strongest in our league when you look at starting pitching in depth. There's better starting pitching, at the top, but overall depth, I think Kim has it. When you just look at projections, I think Kim's team finishes first right now, but as we know in this league, it takes a lot. There's free agent pickups, there's trades. It's really hard in an NL only draft to have a completely balanced team right out the gate. That's something you got to work towards all season long through trades, free agent pickups, and whatever else you can do. But I really like Kim's team. For me, the biggest weakness I see on Kim's team is a lack of depth and backups. And right now he's depending on Jared Olivia, Austin Slater, and Ed Rios to fill the last spot as utility starter. For me, those are good long-term bets, but Edwin Rios is not going to start out the gate. Austin Slater is not going to start, and you're depending on Jared Olivia to start, and I'm not sure what you're getting there right now. So I really feel like that is one weak spot because counting stats count so much in NL only. That's really the one weakness I see. Joaquin Soria, Mark Melanson, and Amir Garrett as closers. That's a good start. She's got a team that can compete.
You're killing me, Rich.
You're killing me too, dude. You keep saying she.
I know. I can't help it. Once I started, I couldn't stop, and then it just kind of is funny to me. So sorry, Kim.
Yeah, Kim definitely has a solid team, all around, and I definitely think he's one of the top 3 teams.
Going back to the draft, I guess the most shocking pick to me was Josh Bell at number 20 when Anthony Rizzo went 21 to Justin there.
Thank
Like I
you.
said, what's that?
I said thank you for that.
Exactly. I was really shocked that he took Bell over Rizzo. I think I like Bell. I think he's probably decent upside, but like I said, that to me that was probably the most the weirdest pick. I think Amir Garrett was early too as well. At that point, you're kind of like threading the needle there as far as which one to pick. As far as like the sleeper pick for him, I do like Edwin Rios for the Dodgers third baseman. I think he is probably going to be undervalued. I'm not sold on Justin Turner having another good year. So I think Rios starts playing more and more. So I think it's probably a really good deep pick. I do think Kim's got a pretty good team, and yeah, I'm not going to say he beats me, but
I wouldn't say that either yet, but I mean, out the gate.
yeah, like I said, definitely a strong team. Next team, Diamond Cutters. Kevin, Kevin, Kevin has a pretty solid team, I think.
So yeah, well, for his best pick, I really liked. He took Christian Walker in the ninth round, or I'm sorry, Taiwan Walker. Taiwan Walker in the 9th round. I just put a last name there. I was trying to remember who it was. I like Taiwan Walker in that round. He actually lasted longer than I thought. He had a sneaky good year last year after a couple injury years, and I see no reason for that to not continue, especially with New York with the lineup behind him. I thought that was a great pick. That was another pitcher that I targeted, and it got taken before I took him, so I was pissed. And for his worst pick, I did not like the Kyle Schwarber pick in the 4th round. I'm not a big Schwarber guy, and in my opinion, there were just too many other players on the board at that point that would have been a better pick than Schwarber. Guys like Romeo Tapia, Jesse Winker, some other guys out there that I thought I would have taken before Schwarber. But again, I'm not looking at this from a perspective of what they needed to fill and all that. I didn't go into that depth. I'm just looking at who they took where, without really looking at roster construction up to that point behind it.
Well, I like Kevin's team. It's very solid. She did a good job. One of the things she's projected to finish first in home runs, second in RBIs. The one weakness I see with Kevin is going to finish in the lower half in stolen bases and batting average. There's lots of guys that have potential to bottom out with batting average. You start with Schwarber, who I think hit 190 last year, but is consistently in the 220, 230 range. You got Moustakas, who's usually around 250. You've got Paul DeYoung, who's up and down. You got Ian Happ, even Victor Robles. So there's some batting average concerns and stolen base concerns. Overall, a good offensive team. From the pitching side, I really like Diaz and Neris and Garcia. Diaz is gonna get a lot of saves. I like the starting pitching. Kevin's projected to finish first in wins and Ks. I think it's a good, solid team. One of the weaknesses of Kevin, if I had to pick one, is probably not making enough moves during the year. So if I'm looking at this team and I'm trying to get better, the thing I would look for is maybe trading one of these, home run guys with a lower batting average and try to improve my batting average and speed somehow. But it's a good team. I think Taiwan Walker late was a good pick. Charlie Morton was a good pick. It's going to be a competitive team.
I agree with your guys' assessment. Kevin is going to be scheduled to probably lead the league in home runs. Trading for Trevor Bauer in the offseason was really good on his part. I think that will help his pitching overall. But the one thing his second best pitcher is Patrick Corbin, and I am not a big Patrick Corbin fan. He hasn't pitched well in the spring training. Didn't pitch well last year. I think he still has some. He's still in a funk from the 2019 World Series. Hopefully, if Patrick Corbin can turn a corner and pitch like he did in 2019, I think he has a team to compete. But if not, he's gonna. Like I say, I hate to pin the entire team's fate on one player, but it might be that. Um, Taiwan Walker is right now is in the minors, got option to the minors, so I'm not sure if he'll be a factor early on. But yeah, like his batting average is going to be really, really bad, and he doesn't have a lot of speed. He's banking on Robles to pretty much carry the team. Bellinger will get him, a half dozen to 20, but Robles, you're putting a lot of hope in Robles to carry your team for stolen bases. Definitely needs to. Like I said, you're right. You probably should trade a Schwarber or an Ian Happ or somebody like that, Mustakis, for a guy that has a little bit better batting average and some speed. That would probably be the first trade I would make. Let's go to Max and Scott. I'm gonna go ahead and throw Scott in there because I know Scott's been active, and I'm not taking anything away from Max, but I know Scott's been active and he's been sneaky in there with some moves and stuff. So good for him. I'm glad to see him back a little bit.
All right, so my favorite pick for this team was he got taken Brandon Belt in the ninth round. Brandon Belt is not spectacular by any means, but it's a guy who had a really good year last year, and he's not gonna really kill you in any category. At that point, a ninth round, it's really good value, I think. My least favorite pick of this team was taking Eduardo Escobar in the eighth round. Not a big fan of him, especially at that point. There were other guys that have much higher upside that were still on the board, like especially guys like Ryan McMahon, who has multi-position availability, and that's key in these kind of leagues. When you're trying to deal with injuries, and then other guys were on the board too, like Carter Keyboom out of Washington, just guys with higher upside. And we're getting in the eighth round. We're at the place where you're kind of starting to look for those high upside guys and taking a chance on them. So I would have not taken Escobar there.
Yeah. For me, guys, when I look at Scott and Max's team, the things I see is like Varsho. I think it looks like he's going to be in the minor leagues or on the bench. So I'm wondering, even though I like Varsho as a possible long-term play, I don't see Varsho starting out the gate, and he's going to be getting you some zeros or low stats early. The other thing that worries me about Scott and Max's team is batting average. You've got a lot of low average guy with Keeson Herrera. You've got Trent Grisham, who's another low average guy. Will Myers, who spikes and then goes back down to 239. You've got Harrison Bader, who's got a great combo power speed, but doesn't hit for a lot of average. And you've got Scott Kingery on the bench. So right now, I would worry that they're gonna finish in the lower third in batting average. And then just looking at the first base combo, and this is kind of the pot calling the kettle black because I've always had Brandon Belt on my team, but the first base combo, William Flores and Brandon Belt, might be a little weaker than the rest of the league. So, that would be a spot, I would look to. And then when I look, there's not a lot of big bombers on this team. The two big bombers really are Yelich and Keston Hurria, and then maybe Will Myers, but he's such a hot and cold player, even though I like him. But from an offensive side, that was my concerns. From a pitching side, I like the team a lot more. You got Luis Castillo, Yu Darvish, Mike Soroka, German Marquez, Madison Bumgarner, TJ Anton, with closers like Kelly Jansen and Brad Hand. The one thing that Max and Scott are going to have to do is just make sure they're managing the bottom half of their rotation, because they have a couple guys like Madison Bumgarner, Matt Moore, Caleb Smith that have upside, but they're also guys that can throw a 5 ERA just as easy as a 3.5. So you have to be careful and make sure that if they start off slow, you're replacing them or putting them on the bench and starting other guys in their place, or it can really hurt you from an ERA standpoint. But I like the pitching staff a lot better. They are projected to be in the lower half of ERA, but when I look at it, I think it's just a matter of managing those starters. I think like Marquez, we talked about making sure he starts on all his away starts and benching him at home or benching most of the home starts. I think if they manage the pitching staff, they have a lot of depth. They can actually finish better than they projected to. The weakness of the team is hitting.
Yeah, I agree. I think that they had a really good draft, especially in the middle rounds. I don't like the Will Myers pick at 22. That's a horrible pick at 22. No punches. But I think it's Soroka at 49, Jordan Marquez at 52, and Kim at 69. There were some really good picks there after that third round pick. Like I said, they have a pretty solid team. I think Brad Hand, he was taken in the second round, and I mentioned this way early in this offseason here that I thought Brad Hand was probably the most solid closer in the National League. But you're right, the average is going to be probably down. Stolen bases, he probably should lead the league in stolen bases or close to it. I think he's probably okay with stolen bases, even though he doesn't have a um, multiple solid home run hitters. He has a lot of players that can hit home runs for pretty well. I think he probably needs another pitcher or two. I'm not sold on Bumgarner. Matt Moore, is he how many innings is he going to get this year? Is he going to be able to pitch like he has in spring training, or is it going to be more? He hasn't pitched in the league for 2 years, so I don't know whether you can really count on him to carry your team. TJ Anton and Mike Soroka, yeah, like I said, those should be pretty well, assuming they get back in the lineup and off the IL sooner rather than later. All right, let's move along to H-Burg Heroes and Mike's team.
All right, so on H-Burg Heroes here, my favorite pick of theirs was Kevin Gausman in round 4. I'm a big Austin fan. San Francisco has turned his career around. A lot of ground balls, low ERA, not a lot of strikeouts, but I think with the premium on certain pitchers this year, I think that was a great pick. And then my least favorite pick of his was Alzolay in round 11. I don't really get that one at all. I don't know if he sees this as a high upside pick or what.
I like that pick really much. Like he's not going to get a lot of innings this year, but like I said, he's a sneaky sleeper and could have a pretty good season. So I'll take exception there. But go ahead.
My main thing was there were guys like Trevor Rogers still on the board, and then this team in general looks to be pretty low in a bunch of the hitting categories. And there were guys like Sam Hilliard, Alex Dickerson, Colin Moran, guys like that were still on the board. So I thought it was a bit of a reach there for this guy. And even though it was around 11, I would have taken somebody else.
Yeah, for me, Michael always has a good team. I think the weakness I think with Michael sometimes not making that big trade when you've got to put you over the top. But when I look at it, it's an offense with a lot of stars. You got Francisco Lindor, Corey Seager at shortstop. You've got Freddie Freeman and Paul Goldschmidt at first base. You got Starling Marte. It has stars. The two weaknesses that really stand out to me is Lewis Brinson and Magneuris Sierra. Both play for the Marlins. I'm not sure either one of them starts, or if they are, they're part-time players. I think that's the area that Kevin needs to focus on, possibly trading one of the shortstops or one of the first basemen for an outfielder. That would make that offensive team go a lot quicker. Also, I think Cespedes. I don't believe Cespedes is even signed yet. So right now is a reserve pick unless you're willing to wait and see if he signs late. I think that's a pick that probably could drop and pick somebody else that could help your team out. On the pitching side, it's really not a bad pitching, but there are a couple of things that are looking rough right now. Miles Mikolas is hurt, so we don't know when he's going to come back. Seth Lugo's got a coming back from injury, so he could be on the IL to start. Mikolas could be on the IL to start. Right now, it looks like David Price could end up losing out on the starting job to either Gonsolin or May, and hasn't looked great so far in spring training. There's still time for him to right the ship. There are some good pitchers there. In my mind, when I look at this team, it's a solid team. Maybe needs to trade one of those shortstops or first baseman, get an outfielder, get an extra pitcher. Also, really doesn't have a closer. When I'm looking at that team, they have Lucas Sims, Devin Williams, and Seth Lugo in the relief pitcher role. So they're going to finish really close to last in saves unless something happens and one of those guys ends up gaining the role. But solid team. There's some holes. Kevin, she'll have to fill those out at some point. I'm sorry. Michael, she'll have to fill those out at some point this year and make some decisions.
The draft was there's good points and low points in that draft. I think Gosman was pretty good in round 4. Devin Williams was an interesting pick. I really like him as a pitcher and a reliever, but is he going to get a lot of saves? If he was the closer, great pick at round 4. But like I said, I had mixed feelings about that pick. David Price, I think he should be okay. As much as I'd like to see May or Gonzalez get that starting rotation spot, I think Price is probably going to get it, even though that Price came out and said that he's okay with pitching out of the bullpen. We'll see on that one. I think Austin Riley at 6 was a little high. Probably going to be okay power-wise. I still question whether or not he can give you a serviceable average. Nemo, fantastic pick at 7. I love him. I think he's going to have a really good spring. Carter Kaboom at 9. Hasn't had a good spring. Hasn't had a good year or two. I really question or not he's going to be a good major leaguer this year, potentially next year. But offensively, you're going to struggle. I think pretty much all the categories except stolen bases you're going to struggle with. You should probably struggle in saves too. Rich was right there. But the rest of your pitching staff, fairly decent. Max Fried is Azalea will probably be a really good sleeper, even though I don't think he'll pitch a ton. But like I said, you got some diamonds in the rough in the pitching staff. All right, let's go to the next one. Jason, it's always sunny in Cincinnati.
All right, for this one, let me see here. Okay, so I got my favorite pick for this team was Yastrzemski at 3. He kind of came out of nowhere and had a really, really good year last year. I like him going into this year, and I thought it was a good pick there. My least favorite pick was Rodriguez, Richard Rodriguez in round 7. And the reason being is he had just taken a closer the round before. So he spent two back-to-back picks on a closers here, and Rodriguez, in my opinion, should have been probably the last closer off the board, just because being on the worst team in baseball, there's just not going to be very many save opportunities in that spot. If you look at who was still on the board, there were still a lot of guys on the board that have a lot better value, including Tony Gonsolin, Taijuan Walker, guys like Lorenzo Cain. Just a lot of guys that I would probably taken before then. Even might have even gambled on Noah Syndergaard there. I don't know, but I definitely would have taken taking back-to-back closers there. I wouldn't have done that at that point.
Yeah, for me, I think it's a solid team. It lacks stars. A lot of teams when you start talking, and I think my team lacks stars too. But they're all solid producers. I think the weakest links that I see is probably Josh Fuentes at first base for the Rockies. Now he could end up at third base and replace McMahon, but I don't see him playing at first base. He's always had a decent average but low power in the minors. So that he might be better off starting Max Muncy at first. And then Adam Frazier, I think he's a bench guy. He's a good, solid guy to bring in for weekly replacement, but you're looking at a guy that's not going to have a lot of power, not going to have a lot of home runs starting every day for you at second base. He might be better off finding another player there for second base. But from an offensive team, other than that, there's some solid plays there. On the bench, he's got Andrew Stevenson. I'm not sure Stevenson's going to play a lot, and then Shogo Akiyama, and I think the jury's out on that. And then he also took Joey Votto. We'll see how that works out. And then from a pitching standpoint, it's really, other than Strasburg, there's nobody that you really look at and say that they're an ace. Though you could count Zach Wheeler toward the back end of those number 2, number 3 guys. And then after that, there's lots of pitchers that you really got to pay attention to and see how they do from start to start and maybe play matchups. But you got Carlos Martinez, who started out poor in spring training and now has kind of rebounded. You've got John Gray, who I've tried for years to put John Gray on my team and always paid for it with like CRA.
I'm with you on that one, dude. I've done the same thing.
And Johnny Cueto as well. I mean, I think we all like to look at Johnny Cueto and remember those great years for the Reds, but I think those days have come and gone. And if you're starting Johnny Cueto every day, you better be saying a prayer and a Hail Mary every day as well. Overall, he's got a team, but there's some holes. If he's got to keep working that waiver wire, keep making trades.
The draft started off kind of with a question mark with me, with Strasburg as his first round pick. It was later in the first round. We had talked about already Strasburg and his injury, where he fits in. Blake Snell was on the board when he took Strasburg, and that was probably the first question mark I had with his team. If it was me, I would have took a more of a stable, sure thing. If you didn't like Blake Snell, Sonny Gray was there. Granted, Sonny Gray's on the injury list now, but it wasn't at the time. Even Kyle Hendricks, I think, would have been more of a sure thing. First round, I would want a little bit more of a sure thing, and that's kind of the question mark there. I have no problem with Baez in the second round. I liked Mike Yastrzemski with the third round. I like Travis d'Arnaud with the 8th pick in the 8th round. And the reliever that you thought he took in the 8th round wasn't a reliever. It was actually Jackie Bradley Jr. he took in the 8th round. That's an okay pick. I think Jackie Bradley Jr.'s kind of overrated in my opinion, but for where he's at and for where he was drafted, I'm fine with that. As far as your team, I want to.
It was a seventh round. He took Rodriguez, not the 8th.
Oh, okay. Akiyama and Fuentes with the 14th round. I like both of those picks in the 14th round. We got good value there. Even if Akiyama doesn't start the year off with a starting spot, I think there's value there. And Fuentes looks like he's going to be the starting third baseman for the Rockies. He doesn't have a lot of pop, which we've already mentioned, but you can't go wrong with Rockies third baseman. I think your average is going to be good. Your other stats for offense is going to probably be middle of the road. Your ERA and WHIP you're going to suffer with. Rich is right. If you had a little bit more of a stronger ace, I think you'd be okay. You don't quite have that ace, and trust me, we're going to talk about my team here later. And like I said, that's probably going to hurt you. So I would see what you could do to fix that problem. All right. So moving on to Oryx Buffaloes. This
Hey
is
guys, I got to
Will.
hop off after this one. All right, so the next team, the Oryx Buffaloes. My favorite pick from this team was Sam Hilliard in the 12th round. I think that's a good pick for a guy who has power and is playing in Coors Field. And at the 12th round, considering this is a 5-keeper league, it's an NL only league, it's pretty late. And I think that's a good value there. My worst pick of this team was Adam Wainwright in the 8th round, and this kind of goes back to what I just said about the last team. Is in the 8th round there were other pitchers on the board that I would have taken way ahead of Wainwright. Including Drew Smiley, Kim from the Cardinals, like a guy like Taiwan Walker. There were also some other guys like Gavin Lux still on the board for the hitting categories. So I'm not a big fan of Wainwright. Definitely not an eighth round.
Yeah, for me, when I look at the hitting, shortstop is with Jake Cronensworth. I think we all like Jake Cronensworth, the player. The question is playing time. And right now, Will doesn't have anybody else to play shortstop. I think he's going to, not really produce when it comes to counting stats, and that's going to hurt Will as shortstop. And then as far as offense, there's no real stars. You always want to look for potential keepers or players that really stand out that you can trade. Probably the best hitter on this team might be either Reese Hoskins, Jeff McNeil, or Wilson Contreras. So not a lot of big stars, not a lot of big pop. The other big weakness I see, I can see Brian Reynolds rebounding, but Gregory Polanco would be a concern. I'd be wanting to replace him. I think you do have Lorenzen Cain on your bench. So that's a solid play. But just overall lack of power and counting stats will hurt the offense. From a pitching standpoint, I actually like the pitching better. The only real concern I have, I like all the pitchers. You've got Aaron Nola, you got Walker Buehler, you got Carlos Carrasco, who's injured right now, but I think all of us like that pick and would have taken Carrasco if we could have. Zach Eflin as a number 4, and then you got Wainwright as a number 5. I think the only question I see for Will's team from a pitching standpoint, I like them all. It lacks depth. Really good on the closer side with Kimbrel, even though I can't think Kimbrel could possibly lose the job. But you got Pomerantz, Josh Hader, and then you've got one of the San Francisco guys that throws 102. So it's kind of a wild card. Overall, I think offensively going to be challenged. The pitching is good, just lacks depth. It would be nice to have a couple more starters, but I think I could say the same about my team and your team here.
Yep, probably definitely. To follow up on Will's team, I think he got a steal with Aaron Nola in the first round. It fell to him, and that partly thanks to me and my fault. So you got a good steal there. Anyhow, Josh Hader in the second round, I don't have any. I don't like taking closers that early, but can you really argue with somebody like Hader? I don't think so. So I'm okay with that. He took Pomerantz in the third round. He's hurt now, but you didn't know it back then. He was probably projected to be one of the top closers. I personally just don't like using my second and third round for closers, even if they're top shelf closers. don't really get your money back for him, as far as if you were to take Anthony Rizzo or something rather than a closer. You know, it's the value's not there. He didn't have a fourth round. He took Justin Turner in the fifth. I am not a Justin Turner fan. I don't have any high expectations for Justin Turner. Maybe he proves me wrong. I don't
And
know.
I think Justin Turner's going to be a solid play. I think the question is playing time. He gets hurt a lot, but I don't have a problem with Justin Turner. I like him better than you do, Aaron.
Yeah.
I think he can hit 20 home runs and he can hit, 280, 290, but I think he probably does it in 110, 120 games and doesn't play full 150. So you're going to
Yeah.
have somebody fill in at some point.
And Kimbrell, you already mentioned the Kimbrell. I haven't been high on Kimbrell all season, so why start now? And then I do like the 15th round pick, Donovan Solano for the Giants. I think he was a really solid value there in the 15th round. And I really think his pitching staff's really, really good. I think there's a lot of, he could potentially lead our league in pitching, even with Kimbrell. But he has solid closers. He has solid starters. Carrasco, that injury does hurt, which will put a damper on his outlook. I guess that was before that. But you're right. His offense is going to be lacking. If I were him, I would probably look to trade one of those starters for a really solid hitter, somebody that has either power and average or power and speed.
I would trade one of the closers. I mean, that to
Oh
me,
yeah,
yeah, that's where I think he's scheduled to finish first in saves. Trade one of those closers and get a bat. I think that would really make the team better.
well, if you could trade Kimbrell now before he loses his job, that would be the best. I'm not sure. Pomeranz is a little injured right now, and I'm not sure how much value you can get from him. If Pomeranz goes out and saves 2 or 3 games in the first week or two, then yeah, go ahead and greenlight him. But I think the only really closer with a lot of value right now is Josh Hader, and if he trades Josh Hader, his prospects on saves becomes very shaky. So there's kind of the yin and yang. So yeah, if you could trade a closer for a bat, by all means, more power to you. All right, so let's keep on moving. 7 here is War and Peace, and that's our new member, Mike. And we have 2 Mikes now. And I thought Mike had a really good draft. What about you?
Yeah, when I was looking at Mike's team, the weaknesses that I saw were on the pitching side, no set closer. I think Gallegos, who I really liked as well, and then he's got Gratterall from the Dodgers. I like both those plays as upside plays, but he has no real closer, so he's going to hurt from a save standpoint. But really solid starting pitching. I liked all his pitching. Kershaw, Julio Urias, Chris Paddock, Tyler Malley, Jake Arrieta is kind of a upside pick, and then Michael Lorenzo. I think he has a good starting depth and just needs some closing. The hitting is where I think he needs help with. When I look at it, it's a solid offense, but there are a couple of weaknesses. He's got Tommy LaStella playing at first base. Tommy LaStella is a second baseman. I could see him playing second and putting somebody else at first. So he probably needs an upgrade at first base. Also, he's got 2 low average batting average guys in Cole Calhoun and Jock Peterson. I think I like both these players because they both have 30 home run potential and can score a lot of runs and drive in some runs. I think Calhoun led the league in home runs last year, and we know what Jock Peterson can do. My concern with having 2 of them starting every week is going to really kill your average. So I would try to trade one of those guys for maybe somebody that can get me some steals. When you look at overall team, Michael's projected to finish last in batting average and stolen bases. So if I could trade either Calhoun or Peterson to somebody like you who really loves Peterson, and get somebody with some steals, I think that's something I would look at doing.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I've actually broached him about a particular deal. I think Justin has too. I was looking at Peterson and another Jesse Winker, and he doesn't seem to be interested in trading, which is fine. I think he probably needs some help with pitching. I like his offense quite a bit, and he's projected to be last in stolen bases. He definitely needs some help there. Home runs and RBIs. I think he'll be fine there in all of his other counting stats. I really do.
Oh, and he also has, and I forgot to mention, but is it Marcus Stroman on that team as well?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's to me, I think he does have some depth. I like the upside. I mean, his number 2 is not strong, but he has a lot of depth. You've got Urias, you've got Stroman, you've got Paddock, all filling in those roles, and then you do have Miley, who was a high K guy last year. I like what Gio Gallegos is going to give you. He's going to give you a lot of Ks out of the setup role, and I think Gatterall is going to play well. He needs a closer
Yeah,
somehow,
definitely.
either picking it up off the waivers and like I said, some speed and maybe trade one of these power guys for an average guy or an
I
average
really
speed guy.
I really like the Lux pick. I like the Urias pick in the third round. I like Winker. I think he got very good value there. Gallegos, obviously, we talked about. You and I have both talked on several times about Gallegos versus Hicks. I won't repeat that. I think he got some good value with Chris Taylor in the 10th round. He fills a lot of categories, but he doesn't have any saves. He doesn't have any stolen bases. He I like his offense. I like some of his starting pitching as well. He's new to the league, so he's still kind of learning some of the nuances. But I think there's a lot of there's a lot of things here, tangible stuff that you can build upon. So, like I said, I think he'd had a very good first draft.
Agreed.
All right, so let's go to Justin, and we can talk all kinds of stuff about him since he's had to leave early.
So you want me to bust on Justin first?
Oh yeah, go ahead and bust away.
Okay. Offensively, let me get Justin's team pull up. But I think it's a solid offensive team. He does have some stars when you look at it. He's got Fernando Tatis, Trevor Story, Anthony Rizzo, Alec Baum. He's got some solid players in there with Adam Duvall and AJ Pollock. He's got some upside guys with Nick Senzel. The thing that I look at, he's probably got 2 low batting average guys back to back in his outfield. It's going to hurt him from a batting average standpoint, even though they're big potential power guys and Tyler O'Neill and Adam Duvall. I would try to move one of those guys and get somebody else to maybe help me with my batting average. Um, he has a lot of extra speed. He's got Jonathan Villar. He's got D. Strange Gordon, who I don't know how much he's going to play for the Reds, but if he does play a lot, he could be a good value pick. He's got Nico Horner, who I think could end up playing a lot for Chicago this year. And he's got Brendan Rodgers, who's kind of a wild card pick for the Rockies. You were talking about possibly Fuentes playing third base. In my mind, I have McMahon playing third base, and I have somebody like Rodgers or Garrett Hampson at second base. But I think the jury's still out on how the Rockies are going to play out.
Yeah, I think Rogers, unfortunately, is going to be out for about a month of the season at least. And if it's anything like the last season or two, those minor injuries that might take a week or two turn into a month or two. And by the time he's on the field in the major league uniform, he's already missed half the season. So I liked Rodgers. I liked the pick. I had plans to take Rodgers myself, and obviously I'm glad that Justin beat me to the punch. But like I said, I have no faith in him at this point.
Yeah,
Some of the things I think his batting average is going to struggle with all year. Guys like Tyler O'Neill and Duvall, which you've already mentioned. Alex Bohm, he has a lot of faith in him. He had a good second half of a short season last year. I'm not ready to, proclaim that he's an all-star third baseman, but he might be serviceable. Jonathan Villar, he'll even admit this, was his absolute worst pick in the I think it was the fourth round. Anthony Rizzo was a really good steal in the top of the third for him. He has some solid power. I think the two things he's going to struggle with is batting average and pitching strikeouts. I think he doesn't have quite the strikeout guys. His ERA and WHIP are pretty good. He's probably going to struggle in those two categories.
yeah, you're right. I really like Heliot Ramos for the Giants. I mean, he's having a good spring. I think he'll be up at some point and starting this year for the Giants in the outfield. So I think he's going to be a good pickup. From a pitching standpoint, his top three: Jacob DeGrom, Max Scherzer, Pablo Lopez, and then he's got some interesting guys who, to be honest, if they were there where I wanted them, I could have potentially picked those up too. Kwang, Hun Kim from the Cardinals, Anthony Discofini, and Josh Lindblom, and he's got Mackenzie Gore, who I think is going to be there at some point. And then out of the bullpen, a little weak, he's got Anthony Bass, who I think is going to win the job for the Marlins, but then Chris Martin, he's a backup to Will Smith for Atlanta. So not a bad team. Like I said, the weakness I see is batting average, and then doesn't have a lot of depth in the pitching, but I think that's almost true with all our teams, to be honest with you.
All right, let's go for another bad team. Let's go to your team. Do you want to? Should I rate your team, or do you want to talk about your team first? And I can either.
Let me rate my team, and then I'll let you rate it.
All right.
All right. In my mind, my offense has a lot of depth. I have all three of my reserves. I feel like could potentially play, are going to play a lot, and could be guys that I end up starting at different points this year. I like my depth, and I have a solid offense, but I don't have a lot of superstars. My superstars is Ronald Acuna and Trey Turner, and that's about it from a superstar standpoint offensively. But I have a lot of really good players, just not a lot of depth. If I have a weakness, it's in the outfield, but I feel like I'm going to be finishing the top two or three offensively. My weakness is once again pitching. I only have one closer in Will Smith, and then I have Trevor May and Freddie Peralta. I like all my pitchers. Don't get me wrong. I feel really strong about Jake Flaherty. I feel really good about Zach Gallen. Up until Sonny Gray got hurt, I liked him. Now I'm not as sure. I like Tony Gonsolin to get some playing time. I picked up Chase Anderson just because I wanted to get somebody that I felt was going to get some innings and could keep a mid-4 ERA. I really like my Noah Syndergaard pick because he's a potential closer for next year that I got late. And I think he's going to come back early. They're saying, possibly sometime in June. I don't have depth from a pitching standpoint. I lack depth. Right now, if you look at projections, I'm last in wins. I'm 8th in saves. I'm last in strikeouts. So I'm pretty good in the ERA and WHIP. I would love to have 2 or 3 more starters. I really think that's a weakness, but it's trying to balance that out with my offense. I think if I'm looking at my team right now, I need to make some trade, and I might have to trade an offensive player or two and fill them in with my backups and add some pitching that way. When I'm looking at it, I really felt like my worst pick was picking Hosmer so early. I think I have 2 first basemen. I probably need to make a trade there, or either trade Ryan McMahon if he can, and try to either add some offense in the outfield, but really, add some depth to my pitching. But I think I have a solid team. I think I have a top 4 or 5 team, but I'm not sure I have the top 1 or 2 teams. I don't think I'm in that category. What's your take?
It's garbage.
Go ahead. Here's the chorus for you.
There
Keep
you go.
going.
Offensively minus stolen bases. So for all the other 4 categories in the 5x5 league, I think you're going to be first or second in all of those categories, and especially after you make some deals, you probably will be. Your offense is as good as anybody else. I do not like the Jason Hayward pick. I've never been a fan of Jason Hayward. I never will. Maybe I'm biased. I just don't see a lot of value there. He did improve his batting average a little bit last year. He's just a good defensive player with very little else to be excited about. CJ Crone, I think you've already said that it was a good. You like him as a good sleeper. I would agree. Dansby Swanson, I know you kept him. He's a solid player, just nothing fancy. He's just kind of. I would liken him to a maybe a Ford Taurus. A good solid vehicle, but just nothing on the fancy side. He's not a Porsche. He's not a Ferrari. He's a good, solid, family vehicle. He'll get you he'll get you to the store and get you back. So that's your offense. As far as stolen bases, you're counting on Trey Turner and Acuna, and I think that might be about it. There's be a few more that'll chip in a few places here and there. Saves, you definitely need another closer. Trevor May, I think Trevor May is going to come out and get as many saves as Diaz, but you and Justin, on the other hand, do not. Will Smith is pretty much your only solid closer. I think the spring he's had has confirmed that he will be the closer. I don't think he's given up a run so far this spring. And Syndergaard, yeah, like I said, that's probably a pretty solid pick for where you took him. I'm not a big fan of taking a pitcher after their Tommy John year, or after the year after their Tommy John. They usually always struggle with control, and so with a pitcher with coming back from Tommy John's, you usually have 2 years that are bad rather than just the one, because you're going to walk a lot of players and might get inflated to ERA and WHIP because of that. So anyhow, I think your strikeouts are going to be down as well. You definitely need another pitcher. If you could add 2 pitchers, that's even better. But like I said, it's kind of nitpicking. Your offense is so good. I'm sure you'll be able to trade them and get some additional pitchers, or even pick some up off the waivers. You're really good at that as well.
I agree with you with Syndergaard, but when I was drafting him, my thought was he could potentially be a keeper that somebody wants next year that I could trade, or once he comes off the DL, everybody's going to get excited about Syndergaard when he comes out throwing 98, and I can use him as trade bait for somebody else. And I just thought it was value pick. But
Yeah.
I'm kind of with you on what you're saying about Syndergaard coming out struggling, and to be honest, I'll probably hold him till he comes off the DL, and then look to trade him. Maybe bundle him with some other players for maybe one good player, one better player. I don't know.
Well, even still, like him already being on the IL, you can stash him on your IL and then go out and pick up another player off waivers too. So it doesn't. It's kind of a free spot for you. So that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, and that
All
was
right.
the thought. It would give me a waiver pick.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to the league champs from last year. I like saying it. I haven't got to say it in a really long time, so I gotta use it while I can.
Now you got a great opportunity to go back to back, Aaron. I mean, when I look at your team, the only thing is I know you had to trade either Bueller or Trevor Bauer, but then trading both, oh, I think it hurts you a little bit, to be honest with you. But you still have a really good team. When I look at your team, I right now, if I was, if it was just draft and hold, I would probably have Kim first and you second. I think you have the best offensive team right now in the league because you have so many stars. You've got Ozzy Albies, Manny Machado, Mookie Betts, Conforto, Will Smith, Ketel Marte, and I think he's going to get outfield eligibility after the first week. So you
Yeah.
plug him in. I think Dylan Carson is going to be up there, and you'll have him on your bench. But then if he comes out and becomes a 2020 guy, he's going to be a great play. You got Key Brian Hayes. Offensively, you're really good. I think you're going to end up probably putting Hampson on the bench. And then if he comes out hot because he has hot streaks where he gets tons of homers and stolen bases, then you can plug and play him. And Avisail Garcia, I kind of see him losing playing time with him adding Jackie Bradley Jr., but he's a good bench spot. And I think you've got good upside with speed with Edmund, and I like Aguilar late. It's a really good offensive team. From a pitching standpoint, I like all your pitchers, and you said it earlier that you liked all of them. I like them all. I think you're going to finish first in saves. When you look at it, you don't have a lot of depth. Your top three, Woodruff, Snell, and Alcantara, are great. And then you've got high upside guys in May and Smiley, and then you're kind of playing David Peterson. So I'm kind of the same thing I'd say about myself. I like your pitching better than mine, by the way, but I like all your pitchers. I'm not sure you have enough of them, and then all your reserve picks are future closers, and probably two of them end up closing that you can trade. So I like where you are starting out. I think the most depth of anybody from a pitching standpoint is Kim's team.
Absolutely. Well, after we just recently made that trade, I traded Marte for Musgrove. So yeah, it definitely helps him with pitching there. He has depth now, and whereas I do not.
But whereas in a lot of leagues, NL only leagues that don't have a lot of trading, our league has always been pretty open and people open to trading. So I really think I like your team from the standpoint you got to have stars because if you got stars, people want to trade for them. And if you're trading from a position of strength, it's a whole lot easier. And you're going to be at the top. I have you at 45 points on offense. So that's finishing basically ninth or 10th in every category. Then you can trade some of those guys and add pitching. And then also, like I said, you have good pitchers. It's just a matter of who's gonna, is Smiley gonna get hurt? Is David Peterson gonna win the fifth job?
I think David Peterson's already won the fifth job, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, I liked him. He was a guy that I wish I'd have picked him up earlier. And then I like Kyle Wright. You were talking earlier. I felt like Kyle Wright turned the corner last year toward the end of the season, his last three starts, and then in the playoffs, he kind of changed the way he was pitching off the rubber, and he kind of changed his approach to batters, and it seemed like it worked. I like him this year, and I definitely would be keeping an eye on him. So
Yeah, I think Wright starts the year off in the rotation strictly because Soroka is going to be starting the year on the IL. I think he gets that job. He gets the chance to prove that he belongs, and they can demote somebody else to the bullpen if Soroka comes back, or they could, there's always an injury that pops up. So Kyle Wright, I think, has the opportunity to play, and I probably wouldn't have traded Musgrove if I didn't have David Peterson. I really like David Peterson. He's shown a lot. He had a really good 2020. He's done a lot so far this year. I think he continues to shine here in 2021. Um, like I said, I threw the dart at several closers from my reserves. I was taking chances on some backups. I still on that Sean Doolittle bandwagon. I'm not sure I'm going to give up on him yet. He threw a clean inning yesterday, and only the sky's the limit for him now.
yeah,
um,
I'm with you. If he goes out and throws a couple more zeros, I mean, Amir Garrett and Lucas Sims, they haven't been on the field, so you
yeah,
know,
they both of those just got on the field here the last few days, so they're behind schedule. Doolittle hasn't done a lot, but like I say, he's starting to turn it around. It's still anybody's guess who's going to end up as a closer there. And Kimbrell has continued to stink in the spring, just like he's done in the last 2 years. So Workman definitely has a shot, especially since Wick is going to start the year on the IL. So Workman might have the opening there to sneak in and grab that closer job. So I think the way I did my pitching staff, you're right. The pitching is going to be a problem for me, but I don't think it's going to be quite as bad because I'm going more of a closer mentality, which is going to it's going to hurt me from a K perspective. I'm not going to be in the top half in Ks, I assume. Hopefully Snell and May and the rest of them, make up a little bit. But I'm probably going to be struggling with Ks. And by the way, Dustin May was throwing triple-digit heat this past weekend and showing that he deserves to be in that rotation. I still have hope that they make him a starter. They might go 6 starters this year. Who knows? But anyhow, like I said, I do like my offense. Brian Hayes and Dylan Carson should definitely make my offense something to be reckoned with. I wish I had a little bit more of a sure thing at first base, but I don't, and there's nothing I can do about it at this point. I'm not going to go out and trade. I'm particular who I get at first base, and I know you've talked to me about Ryan McMahon, and he's not the person I want at first base. I think I'd rather have Aguilar. So as of right now, I'll keep Aguilar until something else better comes along. Like I said, he's still a sleeper, and he might turn out to be gold. Who knows?
Yeah, no, I like Aguilar. I think there's some risk with Aguilar, like you said, but I'm with you. I wanted Aguilar. I probably would have picked him had he stayed around, even as my third first baseman, just because I think he's 25, 30 home run potential, and that's
Yeah.
great to have that spot at utility if it comes open. But yeah, I think you've got some players that you could move to improve your team. Either some of the stars that you've got McCann at catcher. I think for me, it's going to be hard to trade him until he gets on the field opening day and he proves once again that he's a guy that can hit 15 to 18 home runs. Then he'll show trade value for you. And then he's also a guy that can back up Will Smith if he gets hurt. But
Yeah, I have no problem with keep playing McCann as well as Will Smith. I know it's a one catcher league, but we have two utility spots. He's going to get me a decent average. He's going to get me a decent number of home runs. I have no problems there.
all
He's
right,
going to get a lot of playing time.
here's my question for you. When I look at your team, opening day is coming up. We're about to have the minor league draft. I mean, are you going to activate somebody
Oh
like
yeah,
Brian Hayes and Dylan Carlson? And then who are
I
you
will.
going to drop? Because, I mean, do you drop two of your guys that you got, as reserves, potential closers like Doolittle and Crichton? Or do
I
you
was
drop,
pencil.
you
I
know,
was penciling Doolittle in for my person to drop. However, we got another week, so I'll see what I will probably drop a closer or two or a potential reliever or two um, to pick up somebody. So,
you
like I
can
said,
hold
there's
on to Pache a little bit longer because he only got what 4 at bats. So you can bench him for a little while, but keep Brian Hayes and Carlson you're gonna have to put on the roster pretty quick.
Garcia might be an option to drop too, depending on what happens with Lewins and Kane. I think I'm high on Garcia this year, but I don't know. Like I said, his playing time is dependent on Lorenzo Kane, and Lorenzo Kane is injured, so he's going to be the fourth outfielder otherwise. So he's a possibility. Luis Urias, he hasn't hit very well in the spring. I'm high on him, but I may have to drop him. So I might be looking to maybe package a couple hitters for a position player too. Who knows?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, for a package a couple position players for a starting pitcher.
yeah, I'm with you on your Rice, and I'll be honest, I like Garcia coming into the off season. I really thought he was going to bounce back, and then they added Jackie Bradley Jr., and it's kind of crowded. I guess they're going to try to find playing time for all four guys. He's a power speed guy. He hit 2010 and 19, so it gives you a little bit of everything. And I think one year he hit 330 or something like that in the AL. So he has some upside, but I'm with you. Yeah, you're going to have some opportunities. Even Christian Pache, I believe, without a doubt, is going to be in the starting lineup day one for the
Oh,
Braves,
I do too.
and he's going to be there all year.
I will probably leave him. I will probably so our minor league draft isn't until the Saturday after opening day, so he is definitely somebody going to be on my minor league roster until then, and we'll see what happens on opening day. I might leave him on my minor league roster for the first month or so, just until some of the roster spots figures themselves out. But we'll see. I'm not as low on Garrett Hampson as you are. Apparently, I still think there's pretty good potential there, and I think he's going to be a really cheap source of stolen bases. So
Well, yeah, I'm with you. The speed is definitely there, and there is some power there. There's there's a lot of swing and miss. I mean, he struck out 50 times in 167 at bats in 2020. 2019, he struck out 88 times in 299 at bats. So he's really hot and cold. When I look at Garrett Campson, I'm always scared of those low batting average guys anyway. I do
yeah,
I like his upside, but I like him more as a bench spot. And then when he gets hot, he gets really hot, then put him in the lineup. Or when he's playing in Coors, put him in the lineup if he has a starting job. But anyway,
yep,
good team. I think you and Kim, I really don't think there's a runaway favorite. I think there's lots of teams that could win. If I'm being honest, I think 7 or 8 teams could potentially win. There's only maybe maybe 2 or 3 teams that I don't see um, having enough players that could potentially win. So I think it's a pretty deep league. Nobody's really standing out way ahead of the others. I think the 2 top teams I would be average Joes and Redlegs, and then fighting for third through fifth. I would put my team in that category. I have a shot, but it's a long season, so you gotta
yeah.
play it out, make trades.
I
See
think
what happens.
there's, like I said, I think there's, depending on how moves are made at the start and in the season, there are several other teams that could potentially do well. Like the new guy, Mike, like I say, if he picks up a key player or two, I think he could potentially be right there as well. I like Kim's team, obviously. I like my team. Probably, I don't know. I'm always kind of down on my team a little bit. I like Justin's team. Justin's team's pretty strong. Your team is always strong. If it's not strong on opening day, then it usually is by end of July. So never count your team out, unfortunately. It's like I really like those years where you're just down at the bottom of the league and there's no chance for you to catch back up. But unfortunately, that doesn't happen very often. So yeah, like I said, I think there's a lot. Kevin could make a key trade or two and be right there in a position to win as well. And that's not to say like any of the other teams. Like I said, I think Will has a really phenomenal pitching staff. He has pitching is a really big important part of this league. Jason has some pretty good talent. Aceberg Heroes has some talent. There's a lot of talent in the league, and I think there's a lot of. It really depends a lot on what happens over the next month, the course of the next month, what trades are made, who improves themselves, what key, free agents are picked up. But right now, like, yeah, I think you, Justin, and Kim probably have an advantage right now.
Well, I think, you're right. And I mean, one thing you were talking about the first month, I mean, I look at like the free agent pickups last year. Dom Smith, you picked up right off the bat, and that was a great pickup. I'm not sure I see those guys this year like I did
Yeah,
last year. I mean, I don't know. I don't see them.
the Dom Smith last year was important because of the DH and the NL. Like when I heard that the DH was coming to the National League, I was looking at, okay, who benefits the most out of this, and Dominic Smith was like, name was flashing in bold lights. I'm like, wow, like he he has a really excellent opportunity this year, and that's why he was my first. I needed pitching last year, and I went ahead and picked up Dominic Smith because I thought the upside was too great.
And I think that's an important thing when you're playing this game is sometimes you always want to kind of fill in your weakest link. But if there's a player out there that can make your team better offensively and replace another guy potentially that you potentially trade down the road, you take the higher upside guy.
Absolutely, yes.
So even if it doesn't help your team this week or next week, yeah, you definitely have to look at that. It's a little easier to find offensive guys to me than pitching, unless you're looking at closers. It's harder to find those starting pitchers that come out of nowhere like Corbin Burns did last year.
All right.
And I guess we should have seen it, but that's all I got, man.
All right. Well, let's call it a show. Thank you guys for listening to another episode of Fantasy Knuckleballers. You follow us on Twitter at FKnuckleballers. Email us at mvp@fantasyknuckleballers.com or check us out on our website at fantasyknuckleballers.com. And go ahead and subscribe to our shows, and you'll be notified when there's a new episode available. And I hope you enjoyed it. Leave us feedback. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.